is sacrifice. And so I'm going to talk about the woman I love, the woman that raised me, Mary Alice Boston Wright. 1937, right? All right, I got that right. So that was good. November 21st is the date that we celebrated for like over 60 years, right? Because that's the date that her mother told her that she was born. And then one day she was trying to get a passport and had to actually go get her birth certificate. Remember, they had midwives.
Yeah.
And so when the birth certificate said 11/22, and so she had to change everything. Now it's messed our whole family up. Half of them think it's on the 21st, but it's on the 22nd, so we don't know which day to celebrate. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how can I tie things together from my perspective and how the family dynamic has impacted my life. And Sister Maudine, when she called me, she helped me to tie it together because she told me an incident that's going to tie together, hopefully, throughout my time of talking today. She told me of an incident of my grandmother, who I call Grandma. I didn't even know her name was Bertha. I just called her Grandma. You couldn't call people by their name. You called me Grandma or Uncle or something like that. So, you know, Grandma Bertha was actually holding my mother at 3 months. And supposedly, Dad looked over at Mom and said, "How that baby girl doing?" He said, "She's doing all right." And then he turned it over, he fell asleep. So my mom didn't really know her dad. At 3 months of age, her dad died. And I want to show you how this weaves through as far as the sacrifice. So Bertha, my grandmother, actually married a gentleman named Mr. Frank. And so I'll talk a little bit about my time coming to Mississippi because unlike everybody else, I love coming to Mississippi. I just had a few problems with Mississippi. The first problem was you couldn't get a bath except for that little tub thing that they put you in.
Right, right.
Come on now.
Yes,
come on.
yes.
Everybody talking about how much they love stuff. I was like, I love it. Some things I didn't love, right?
Yeah.
That first one, that little, you had to wait and hot water again. Like, man, how long get the hot water? You told hope it stay in there long enough so you get you a good splunge bath. That's what they call it, right? When the splunge tub bath, that was the first one.
Yep.
And then when you stayed with Mr. Frank and Bertha Lee, right? They didn't have no indoor amenities.
Right. Yep. Right.
So number 1 was okay, but number 2 was in trouble. So I would wait a lot of time because Charles, he had an indoor place, right? So they would say, a couple of days we would go down to Charles. So by day 2, I was sick. When we going to Charles again, right? So that was my number 2 thing that I had a problem with coming to Mississippi. My third thing was my first switch whipping was in Mississippi. And my mother was spanking me. And Grandma looked at her and said, "Boy, you need to go get a switch for that boy." You know what she did? She listened to her mama. She went and got a switch. She gave me those are the 3 things. But I love coming down here like everybody else. When we came down, we spent a month here. And so I spent a lot of time here getting to know people and hanging out and just having fun. There was a little young gentleman across the road from us that had a basketball net. And so I would go over there and we would battle every time. It seemed like day in and day out for 20 or 30 days. My mom grew up here, and at the age of 17, she decided to go to Chicago. And probably the biggest reason for my mom leaving here, when we talked about this, was she did not like cotton picking. And so she left, think about this now, at 17 to Chicago to live with Mr. Frank's people for a little while. She didn't know hardly anybody in Chicago. But at 17, she decided to make that trek, as Byron taught, to move out. Eventually, she got married to my dad, which is Donald Jean Wright. And that's how you eventually get me. I had an older brother that died early. And I really want to talk about that because that was something that, even though it was a tragedy in our family, my mom never harped on that. You know, it was nothing that, you know, we had a picture and everything up of him. We respected his life and other things like that. But she moved on in faith in the Word. As you've heard about the Bostons, right, they love God and love His Word. And so I was in church 4 times a week, right? I was at teachers meeting, I was at choir practice, I was at the Usher board meeting, I was at all these different meetings every week. And then on Sundays, right, if there was a program afterwards, I was there till 3 or 4 o'clock on the program. If my dad stayed around, at least stay with my dad and listen to the Bears game in the car, right? Because that's where he was at. So I definitely was a church boy. My mom was always faithful to serve. I can remember a time where grandma got sick and my mother brought her to Chicago. And I mean, by the time my grandmother got to Chicago, she was pretty bad. And my mom and my dad did the things that got her connected with the hospital that my dad worked at, and they got her better, right? And when she finally got better, we thought she would be staying in the Chicago area with her, but you know what she wanted to do? She come back to Mississippi. And it was probably a month or a month and a half after that, she died. But what it taught me as a young person was, I saw how the family worked together. I saw how they got her back and her believing wholeness to get back to the soul of Mississippi. I saw the strength, I saw the sacrifice that happened just so she could be back at the place where she wanted to be and live. That had a real big impact on my life. My mom served as a missionary. She serves a mission every month, once a month, probably for the last 50 years, guys. She takes a meal every month just to help people out. Now, it used to be where she would prepare the meal actually at the mission place. Have me out there serving the food and everything. That's Sunday night, I can't do anything. I'm with my mom, right? I'm a church boy. I'm my mama's boy. And so I'm doing all these things with her. But it taught me something. It taught me how to give to people. And my mom was consistent. I can't remember a Sunday my mom didn't go to church. Snowstorm, they're trying to figure it out. I just cannot remember a time that she wasn't steeped with God, the scriptures, and people that love God and His Word. And it permeates our family. It permeates what we do. It's just the overall part of our fabric. The reason I got my 2 little ones here is that, you know, hopefully something of this bleeds into their ears. Because this is the makeup of what we are as a family. Right at my senior year of high school, I contacted a disease called spinal meningitis. And if you ever heard of spinal meningitis, you've got clear liquid in your back spine here. When you got spinal meningitis, that means that clear liquid has gotten infected, right? And it's a pretty serious situation. We didn't even know I was sick. My mom brought me back some McDonald's and I couldn't eat it, which is, you know, at that time, that was amazing for me. She ended up taking me to the hospital and they found that I had spinal meningitis. And the incident I want to recount to you is, I remember them pulling the fluid from my back and that fluid being just all white with pulse. And the doctor was an Indian doctor. And he was like, oh boy, this is really, really bad. This is really, really bad, right? And I remember my mom was in the side, and she gave him this finger, like, come over here. And I was like, well, he gonna get it. And he did. Whatever happened, that doctor was the most positive doctor after that. And I didn't even know how serious my injury was until about 2 weeks later I was in the hospital, and 18 people in Chicago had died from spinal meningitis. And so that's the type of person my mother is. She's always out on the front lines giving. She's always a person that not only talks about what she believes, but she's more of a person that goes out and takes the action. My middle girl here, probably about 5 years ago, she contacted a pretty serious disease that was life-threatening. And my mom came up for a few days, and I can just remember my mom rocking my daughter and just saying, it's going to be all right. And so as I kind of sum up my statements and some of my thoughts, the biggest thought that came to my mind is that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. And that's what we've seen over a life legacy. I believe the people that have shared have really shown that in their lives, right? And one of the biggest things that you have in this world is the greatness of family. And I'm thankful for my mom, that all she's done for me, and now that I can now hopefully teach another generation, right, to walk out in those great steps that she's taught me. So those are the things that I wanted to share. Thank you.
I appreciate you on just 2 quick points here. Reflecting on some of the things that you don't like. I told you about the fond memories, but also when I came down the first time, I was a young city kid, and at Miss Bertha's house, they had these wasp nests. And I go to Miss Bertha's house, I was a real little boy, and I remember sitting on the front porch scared to death that those wasps would hit, and they're just sitting there with no issue at all. And I'm scared to death. And then the final point about those indoor amenities. When I was a little boy, there were no number 2s in Mississippi. I held out till I got back to St. Louis. It was an adjustment. But you know what? That actually, I am so proud of having had come from St. Louis at such a young age and came to Mississippi, got to know my relatives. That issue on the wasp nest sounds very small, but for a kid from the city, it was a big deal. But look how much broader I became by doing that. My dad could easily have had me in St. Louis and not necessarily interacting with my relatives in Mississippi. He paid for me to come to Mississippi, and it is something that I'm extremely appreciative of. I am and as we sit here and talk, and as you talk about the various relatives, I am proud that I can remember when things are coming back to my mind, these wonderful memories of when I was a kid having interacted with my aunts, uncles, and cousins here in Mississippi. I think we've gone through everyone at this point. And with that, we're going to move over to memorial candle lighting and a poem. Oh, at the end, that's right. I'm sorry, that's right. I forgot. Trudy. Where's Trudy? Trudy, we've been told that you've got some very special reflections that you'd like to share with us. I hope we're not catching you off guard.